The Last of Us Part 1 remake is coming out in a couple of weeks, and the HBO show is coming out early next year, so it's time to talk about the remaster that came out in 2014. My opinion doesn't really change between the different versions that are out right now, but I'm just going to talk about the remastered version because it's just slightly better. But it's time to bring out my inner Baba Yaga because I've got a different opinion. I've talked shit about other beloved games, but this one is kinda different. People say that The Last of Us is one of the greatest games ever made and that it'll open your third eye, give you the ability to perform ninjutsu, genjutsu, and seijutsu, but that never happened to me. Now with all that being said, I still enjoyed the story and I thought it was really good. But another story that I really liked was Logan. Brief spoilers for Logan and The Last of Us for the next 45 seconds, so skip to this part of the video. Alright, spoilers. Both these stories are extremely similar. The two main characters are miserable as shit after years of losing their loved ones in an apocalypse, and they're just trying to survive. But then they meet a little girl, and they have to bring her to the other side of the country. At first, they're like, damn, I don't know if I want to do this. But after spending some time together, they grow to care for each other, and we find out the girl's a badass. They then also meet a family, and one of the kids give each other something. Ellie gave Sam the toy robot, and Nate gave Laura his iPod, but both families ended up dying after meeting the two characters. The main character's friend also dies, and the girl watches over the protagonist as they're knocked out. And in the end, the two main protagonists end up finishing their job by bringing them to the end destination, and they don't even care about their reward. But it isn't over yet. They take it one step further and risk their lives to save them from dying. Now, even though both the stories are very similar, I liked Logan more. And it's because Logan's a movie and The Last of Us is a video game. Logan uses its medium to the fullest potential, while The Last of Us barely does anything with it being a video game. The Last of Us is a movie wanting to be a video game because it tells a really good story, but the gameplay is so limited. And let's start off with the combat. Now you have one of three enemies, a runner, a human, or a clicker. If it's a human, you can either go guns blazing or kill them in stealth. Now, the shooting is whatever, because it's the PS3 Uncharted shooting, which is fine. It isn't as good as the Uncharted 4 engine from The Last of Us Part 2, because it's a bit slower and clunkier, but that isn't a huge issue. But you can also kill the enemies in stealth, which is where most of my issues arise. Cause this is the entire stealth. There's a runner in front of you, just go up to him and press triangle then square. Oh wait, there's two guys beside each other and they won't go away? Alright, just throw a brick or a bottle and go up to the enemy and press triangle square. Clicker, now this is different because you have to approach it by crouch walking very slowly, and then you press triangle twice. Those are the only three enemies in the game, aside from the stalker that's only in the game near the end, and the thrasher which I'll get to later. But those are the only ways you can stealthily kill them until you get the bow and arrow, and until you find a Molotov cocktail. So that means you have a total of 3 ways of killing enemies stealthily in a stealth adventure game. And if I want to be nice, I'll add the shiv kill, which gives us a new total of 4. That shit is deplorable. One of those is basically a copy and paste, the shiv, and the other one is barely stealth. You can also use a brick or a bottle to distract the enemy along with the smoke bombs later on in the game, but they just help you get those other stealth kills. They don't actually kill the enemies. But 4 ways to stealthily kill an enemy and 2 ways of distracting them is deplorable for a stealth game. And if you decided to make the worst decision in your life by playing the game on grounded, then you can't do anything in the game. You can't shoot any of your guns because you have no ammo, so you can't use the bow and arrow for stealth. You can't use any throwable items because you can't find any materials, so there goes the Molotov cocktail and the smoke bombs. And you can't kill a single clicker in the game if you're trying to open all the shiv doors. So on this mode, you're basically avoiding combat a third of the time, and when you do engage in combat, you just press triangle square behind every single enemy. You do the same shit over and over again and throw bricks occasionally. When I first played the game, I played it on normal, but I was bored out of my mind to continue, so I gave up around Billstown, I wanna say. But after I went into high school and after my friends called me a stupid ass bonobo ape for loving Logan and hating The Last of Us, I'm like, okay, I'll try it again. So I played it a couple of weeks before The Last of Us Part 2 came out, and the issues I had when I was 11 years old were much more prevalent on Survivor. The combat is already limited on normal, and in Survivor, you're barely playing a video game. It's a walking triangle simulator. On normal, you have a good amount of bullets, to the point where you can choose between stealth and gunplay, and you'd still need to keep count of your bullets and materials. But on Survivor, the shooting is gone. I don't remember how often I shot my bullets, but it happened very rarely. But sacrificing gameplay for realism is a big turnoff, and it's a very common annoyance in this game. It also becomes an issue while you're looting, when you're opening drawers, cabinets, and shit. The looting isn't as bad as like Red Dead 2, but you still have to spend some time opening a cabinet or a drawer, and then another second to pick up the item. And the exploration sucks as well. Exploring a small area like this over here takes a while, just because Joel walks at the pace of a senile old sloth. Like man, I get it. You wouldn't realistically run for that long, and Joel is old, but let us run a bit faster instead of forcing the player to constantly jog. Like add in like a stamina meter or something. Sometimes you're forced to walk and you can't even jog, like over here. And yeah, there's some dialogue there, but just make us run at the same speed as the average character from the average game. Taking realism this far should never happen. Now, although the exploration was boring, the conversations were really good. Hearing Joel and Ellie talk and all the dialogue was written very well. Joel even tells Ellie that only 1% of everyone watching these videos are subscribed to their channel, and he even tells you to subscribe as well. So, you should do that right now. But the small talk doesn't make up for this slow ass walking and the rest of the triangle simulator. Shit like pressing triangle to find a ladder, pressing triangle to find a plank, pressing triangle to put down the plank or the ladder, pressing triangle to find a raft, pressing triangle to turn on the generator, pressing triangle to give a boost, pressing triangle to pull down a chain. If they got puzzles to replace some of the stuff like half the ladders and planks, then it wouldn't have been an issue. Like I feel like Joel could have learned how to pick locks or something over the years. But they just keep hammering the triangle button over and over again, like Revenge in The Last of Us Part 2. There's not much to enjoy in the gameplay, and the only way I can enjoy the game is by using a mix of both stealth and guns. And the best way of playing it is like this.
That's why we're taking shitty protection.
Or like this when it comes to the zombies. The only times the gameplay wasn't shit was when the game had nothing to do with stealth. Like with the brute enemy. After playing The Last of Us Part 2, their names are kinda confusing because they look the same. But in this game it's called a bloater, and in that game it's called a shambler. But fighting these guys was fun because you could actually use your guns, pull the trigger, reload, and all that fun shit instead of just pressing triangle. And the same thing with the hand-to-hand combat. You can pick up like a 2x4, a metal pipe, and upgrade it with nails and shit on top of it, and fighting the infected with it was pretty fun. Especially on Survivor after doing nothing beforehand. They're not great, especially coming back after The Last of Us Part 2, but at the same time, they're not terrible. And the same thing applies to the chase sequences. The first one where you chase this motherfucker down before you meet Marlene was shit, but the one in Billstown was fine. But those are pretty much the only things I kinda enjoyed from the gameplay. Everything else was stinky, and it really ruins the game. Now some people might bring up that it's a story-driven game and that the focus of the game isn't on its gameplay. But at the end of the day, you are playing a video game, not watching a movie. If you choose to make a video game, then you should take advantage of its medium and make the gameplay as engaging as possible to complement the story. And also, majority of the time you play the game is spent in gameplay. If the only good aspect of the game is its story, then you may as well have made a movie. Now again, the conversations and everything were really good, but I don't believe that's enough to justify its existence as a video game. And I think the HBO show is gonna work, because the game works better as one. And also, I'm not saying that these cinematic games shouldn't exist, because they do work in other games. Like with Naughty Dog's Uncharted games. It's an action-adventure movie as a video game, so instead of watching a stuntman or an actor doing some crazy shit, you get to do the crazy shit. And on the other hand, Red Dead 2 is another very grounded, realistic game that also takes realism too far, but it gives the player choices. You can choose to play the game as a dickhead and get a shittier ending, or play the game as a good man and get the best ending. You willingly chose to play the game in a way you wanted to, and you get a different ending. And also, in case you guys are confused, I'm not talking about the decision you make at the very end, cause that was stupid. I'm talking about the overall decisions and the way you play throughout the game. But in this game, none of your decisions matter, which is fine, but the game mechanics are so limited to the point where it could have just been a movie. When an over-the-top action movie game has better stealth than a stealth post-apocalyptical zombie game, then there is an issue. And people are gonna say, well, Uncharted 4 came out 3 years later on a different console on a different engine. But still, games that came out when I looked like this, during the PS2 era, had better and more advanced stealth mechanics than this game. But anyways, that's all for the gameplay. Everything else in this game was really good. Only technical issue I had was while grabbing some footage over here, but it only happened this one time. The story isn't something I really need to talk about cause there's no point in me spoiling the game. If you like it, you know why you like it, and there are probably tons of videos that explain why the story is good. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It had the perfect ending and it never needed a sequel, but then that happened. But one thing I gotta hand it over to Naughty Dog is their voice actors. These guys never miss when it comes to choosing the right actors to voice their characters, cause they got top of the industry voice actors for their games. Troy Baker, Nolan North, Laura Bailey, and Ashley Johnson are top tier voice actors. Like bro, you got Payne doing Joel, and Richtofen doing this guy. Bundled with the dialogue, mocap animations, the soundtrack, and the voice acting, the cutscenes were amazing along with the visuals. This game in GTA 5 looked like real life to me when I first played it on PS3, and looks better on PS4 with the remaster. The world is already detailed with a bunch of shit, and it's stinky and everything, and it'll look even better on the PS5 with the remake. Now the last thing I want to briefly talk about is the DLC. I played the DLC as it happened, so like after the thing happened, and it was good. Ellie was better than Joel when it came to gameplay, but I'll talk more about that when I make my Last of Us 2 video around the time the HBO show comes out. But the combat is better because you can actually fight the clickers instead of avoiding them, and you got some cool levels where you have infected and human enemies going at it with each other. The story is Ellie's origin story with the other part that takes place in between the two chapters of the main story, and it was pretty good. But that's pretty much it when it comes to the whole game. Giving The Last of Us Remastered a final score, I'ma give it a decent. They spent 3 years crafting a nice story and 3 minutes to design the gameplay, and it really ruins the game. And after they revealed that it's the same exact gameplay from The Last of Us Remastered for their remake, I see no point in getting the new game. It's $100 Canadian after taxes for a game with outdated gameplay that was outdated when it originally released in 2013. Like the least they could have done was bring over the Last of Us 2 mechanics and make it more enjoyable, but they're like nah, and they posted this shit. I would much rather have an Uncharted remake cause that game is horrible, or like a Jak and Daxter remake cause the Uncharted gameplay sucks, so if they remade the combat then the game would have been better, like with the Uncharted 4 combat. And Jak and Daxter came out on PS2. This game came out at the end of the PS3 generation and got remastered for the PS4, and the visuals still hold up. The remake obviously looks better, but it's just so unnecessary. I won't be getting it, but it's probably still gonna do well considering the show's coming out soon. I don't think it'll do well as the Legacy of Thieves cause that was a remaster and you only spend $10 if you already have the game, whereas in The Last of Us, it's a remake with more time spent on the game, and you gotta spend an entire $100. So whatever the next Naughty Dog game is gonna be a bit late because of this game. And I say a bit later because I don't think they spent that much time working on this, because they used the Last of Us 2 Uncharted 4 engine, so it's not like they made a brand new game. Now, this version does include the new and advanced AI from The Last of Us Part 2. But even though the new AI will make the game a bit better, I don't think it justifies the $100. But the HBO show on the other hand is something I'd look forward to, cause like I said in the video, I think the game works better as a movie or a show. I love Logan, it's arguably my favorite comic book movie of all time, and since The Last of Us is almost the same story, I think the show can do really well. It's also HBO, and from what everyone says, they drop consistent bangers. I only watch Game of Thrones, but people say Euphoria is unironically good, overrated but good, and that they have other classics as well, like The Wire and Sopranos. But Chernobyl is apparently one of their best shows, and the writer of that show wrote The Last of Us as well. I haven't watched any of these shows, but I plan on watching them eventually. They just dropped a teaser in some HBO Max promo, and Pedro Pascal is actually perfect. I don't think he's gonna have the one-to-one Troy Baker voice for the entire show. They probably just used that clip to hype everyone up because of how similar it sounded to Troy, but he seems amazing as Joel, and Bella Ramsey was sick in Game of Thrones, and I think she's gonna be sick as Ellie. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the show, not looking forward to the remake. And if you never played the game, I'd recommend just getting PlayStation Plus and playing the game through the collection if you're on PS5. And if you care about the upgraded visuals and if you think The Last of Us 2 AI is worth the upgrade, then by all means, get the game. If you have the original or like the remaster, and if you think the AI and visual upgrade is worth it, then I'd wait for it to go on sale or wait for it to come out on PC and choose whatever system you prefer. The game is supposed to come out on PC very soon after the PS5 release, and if you don't have a PlayStation, you can play it on that. But that's pretty much it for the video. The comment section is going to be a bloodbath, so I might make another reading comments video if there are some good ones. So if you think I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. But that's pretty much it. Later.